The priest gave us Unitarians a brilliant image. The Catholic Church, he said, is like a great pink Cadillac with 4 flat tires. How better to describe an institution that is stuck? And so I want to examine the Catholic intellectual tradition to discover how the church has sunk into such a desperate state of dysfunction. A church can regard its tradition as either a fixed inheritance that prohibits change and growth, or it can respectfully honor the tradition by asking pertinent questions. All intellectual traditions begin with rational inquiry and refining the human search for meaning. And therefore, it includes scholarship, and intellectuals must, in fact, they can only survive in an atmosphere of academic freedom. They insist that reason and faith exist in mutual support of each other. And this is very important, that faith and reason come together. The creative tension that results from mixing faith and reason enlivens both. Reason challenges faith to explain itself. Faith challenges reason to go beyond itself. Catholic intellectuals have always allowed space for new insight, change, and development in Catholicism, rather than make the present subservient to the past. What then emerges as the enormous question is, what is real? Do we dredge up ancient relics and ossified doctrines because that is what we want to believe is real? Or do we make an effort by pursuing scholarship and honoring new discoveries to arrive at that which is actually real? The Catholic tradition, by way of the Vatican, aims to package God not as a theoretical construct, but as an actual, judgmental person, a Father in heaven, who dishes out punishment according to our ability or inability to curb the sins of the flesh because he disapproves of that. But the Catholic intellectual David Tracy, teaching at the University of Chicago, although excommunicated, wants to move Catholic theology away from speculation about God to finally accepting God as, in his words, accepting God as incomprehensible. He says in such a brilliant way that we live on this side of a hidden God. Science and reason, as far as Tracy is concerned, and all intellectuals, science and reason demand that we remove the myths about what God looks like, how God acts, how God thinks, God's prejudices and biases, in order to move closer to a light of truth. The retired Pope, Benedict XVI, referred to now as ex-Benedict, raises a lot of doubt about old church traditions. Does a retired pope keep his infallibility? What happens to the apostolic succession that ostensibly dates back to St. Peter? How can two contemporaries be in succession? It's complicated, at least by Unitarian standards, where retired ministers only complain that although they now have the time to read the whole book, nobody cares. In the Pope's previous position, when he was Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, he served as prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrines of the Faith, previously known as the Holy Office of the Inquisition under Pope John Paul II. Ratzinger officially excommunicated or silenced intellectual Catholics like Hans Kung for his views on papal infallibility. He excommunicated Edward Schillebeeckx for questioning the virginity of Mary, Jacques Pouillet for his views on Christ's symbolic resurrection, Charles Curran, frequent guest on Doug Fabrizio's show, for his views on sexuality and medical ethics. He excommunicated Leonardo Buff, a famous Brazilian liberation theologian, for his views on Christology, purporting that Jesus was an advocate for the poor. And Gustavo Gutierrez, the father of liberation theology, for challenging the wealth of the Vatican. And also the popular Matthew Fox for his views on sexuality and original sin. In light of all the sex scandals and cover-ups, it's interesting to note in retrospect that Ratzinger silenced intellectual priests such as Anthony Kosnick, Robert Nugent, and John McNeil, let alone the recent reprimand of the nuns on the bus, all for their new insights demanding change to allow for marriage, contraceptives, ordaining women, and wider inclusivity. Kosnick led a study on human sexuality. Nugent was let go for presenting modern views on homosexuality, and McNeil for actually ministering to homosexuals. Out they went. What all this simply means is that the Catholic intellectuals support the ability for Catholics to lead authentic lives, denying natural sexual urges, denying the id, denying the appetite, denying that all with the punitive voice of God or superego, fails to provide a healthy balance in which to lead a meaningful life. The Catholic hierarchy leaves no opportunity to mediate the tension between moral reason and natural urges. The hierarchy casts natural human tendencies as failings, as though the id needed to be tamed completely. Priests cannot live authentic lives when denied access to natural human urges. Natural urges and instincts are unwittingly a part of being human. Intellectuals in the Catholic tradition will argue, like Plato and Freud, that the appetite for sex must find balance during the course of life, not be eliminated. The preferred reality by the hierarchy in Rome is that abstinence sustains corporal and spiritual purity, and they will cover up the scandals of abuse just to maintain that archaic illusion. The old church authorities, they claim they've got the recipe for what pleases God. And then the Catholic intellectual comes along and says, what are you talking about? God, after all, is incomprehensible. Boom, he's gone, out of there. But we now know that resisting natural sexual impulses is harmful. Catholic intellectuals do not fear change. For them, the struggle for meaning and authenticity must include new insights from feminist theology, validating women as worthy to become priests. They see homosexuality as natural and value sexuality not only as a means by which to propagate the earth, but as an act of love and joy. In order to act responsibly, contraceptives are acceptable and encouraged. The Catholic intellectual rejects the Trinity as literal personalities to be feared. Ironically, the Catholic Church, which has become famous now for protecting the sanctity of marriage by denying marriage to same-sex couples, was accused by Protestant reformers like Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli. the Catholics were accused of undermining the institution of marriage. By denying priests the right to marry, the Reformers claimed they were insulting the institution of marriage. And Protestant Reformers also noted sexual misconduct among the Catholic priests even back then. They proclaimed that celibacy distances clergy from basic life experiences, compromising their ability to serve as effective counselors. Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, they were all married. Intellectuals always pose a threat to any status quo. But we cannot forget that the Catholic intellectual tradition has as long a history as the church itself. Many have been martyred for the heinous crime of challenging faith to explain itself. Today's Catholic intellectuals are mostly teaching in universities throughout the world, though their priestly authority denied. I have a great deal of sympathy for today's Roman Catholics, where a New York Times CBS poll indicated just last week that 75% of American Catholics see the church as out of touch. They want the Pope's successor to be younger with more liberal ideas. Sounds like they want to put some tires on that pink Cadillac. But the old hierarchy, who wish to foist their antiquated reality onto a modern, thinking, savvy, scientific population, have received their comeuppance at the painful price of countless tragic lives or lives tragically ruined by sexual abuse. Severe repercussions are unleashed when authenticity is denied. Rome's proclivity towards subservience to the past seemingly remains their top priority. Regrettably, the cardinals who will select the next pope fail to understand that once inquiry is stifled, once change is forbidden, an institution, any institution, will crumble in time. So will the new pope get the Cadillac moving? I await the smoke signals from the Vatican.